Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little watch right here. This is the Tag Heuer WAZ1112. And thank you very much, first of all, to Lewis Jewelers over in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They loaned this to me to take a look at for review. And they know I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk, and they're still willing to let me have a look here, and I appreciate that very much. They're also the same people who help me out with my watch purchases. And they're the same people who can help you out with watch purchases. On this, pretty much any other thing, give my buddy DK over at Lewis a call. He may be able to get you some special pricing that you might not be otherwise. Just tell him Nick Shabazz sent you. Anyways, so there you go. Thank you very much, Lewis. Next thing, size comparison real quick here. This is actually not a really huge watch. First off, we can compare it against one of my very favorite quartz pieces. This is the Casio Oceanus. And so you can see here, it's a little bit bigger than the Oceanus, but it's not completely out of line. Here it is against another favorite quartz. This is the Breitling Aerospace here. So you can see it's definitely a little bit smaller than the Aerospace, a little more wearable. Speaking of more wearable, pretty much everything is a little more wearable than the Omega Planet Ocean, although I do love it so. There you go. And then finally, let's actually get some real measurements on this guy. The overall bezel width here is coming about at around 41 millimeters here. The lug-to-lug distance is got the cleaning cloth so it'll stay in position. Lug-to-lug distance is a surprisingly wearable 46, which is nice. The overall bracelet width here is looks to be about 19, which is not great, but some other companies do that. Omega. And so there you go. And the overall thickness of the watch here, we can see, comes in right around 12 millimeters, so not bad at all, although maybe a little chubby by modern quartz standards. So there you go. Next thing, this is a quartz watch. In case you can't tell by the fact that the hour or the second hand is ticking along, tickety tick tick tick, rather than flowing along a little bit more smoothly. Now I know that there is a subset of commenters on every watch video who's going to come in here. Oh my God, quartz watch! How would you pay any money? That's terrible, mechanical. I don't care. So if your comment is limited to the effect of I would never buy a quartz watch, consider it noted. Don't bother commenting. Tell us something a little bit more interesting about your opinions there. And then finally, one thing I'm going to say kind of ahead of time to put this out in the open here. The price on this guy, MSRP is someplace around the 1,300 range. I'll talk more about the price in the final conclusion and throughout the review, but that's why I chose this guy. I actually spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out what I wanted to look at next from their case, and this is the one I ended up settling on because I think that price is actually pretty compelling. And so this is really, I was kind of trying to think, because, look, I know I review a lot of higher-end stuff, your Omegas, your Breitlings, that kind of thing. But the thing is, I wanted to find something that would be maybe a better fit for people and, that would be more obtainable for, a majority of my viewers. So, anyways, that's where I'm going with that. And then finally, this is going to be a relatively quick review, although it's still probably going to take freaking forever because it's me, because this is not something that I actually got a chance to wear around and about. This is brand new from the factory. So anyways, let's talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of your little Tag Heuer here. So on the good side, first off, this has a very nice dial. What you can see here is that this has a, it's a nice black sort of dial, matte finish. You've got a nice little white box around there. You've got fully applied indices, and all of the indices are loomed. And actually, speaking of the loom, I'm going to charge this off camera with a flashlight here, so you can get a sense of this loom. This is some pretty serious loom here. And I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed by that. It's definitely well loomed, and considering every one of the indices, even with the date window here, it is loomed. That's great. I'm loving very much the fact that they're willing to do that, so that's good. Next up, this has a rotating timing bezel here. This makes more sense than a dive watch, and it's a unidirectional bezel, but it's also very helpful in my experience, that is, for just timing things randomly. Out and about, okay, I got to pick up a pizza in 45 minutes. Okay, there you go. Minute hand gets here, I get a pizza. Beautiful thing, and I gotta say the action on the bezel is actually quite good. There's no play, there's nothing like that, and because it is a steel bezel with nice recessed numbers, these numbers are actually, these numbers are actually kind of dug in there. That means it's going to polish out very, very nicely. After a little while, if you get scratches and whatnot, you'll be able to restore it back to its former glory pretty straightforwardly, and so that's a beautiful thing. Next thing I gotta say, this has 200 meters worth of water resistance. Well, I don't have to say it, but I'm gonna say it. say it. That's got 200 meters worth of water resist. That's a beautiful thing. I'm a big fan of the water resistance there because it means that basically you don't have to think about water ever freaking again. Water is just not an issue for this, and so that's a nice thing. Next thing, this is using a quartz caliber. This is using a good old-fashioned quartz core, and that includes a couple of different features for you here. It's got a nice date window here, which you can see, and it has a quick set date feature. If I pull the crown out, it is a screw-down crown, by the way, which is how it's getting at 200 meters. You can see here that if I turn this way, it will actually change the date. Oh, hold on, wrong direction. There you go. So it'll move the date forward. That means if you take it off for a little while and you need to adjust, for instance, for a 31 or 30-day month, you can do that pretty straightforwardly. Not as important with a quartz as with mechanical, but still. It is a hacking movement, which means when I pull the crown all the way out, the second hand stops as well, allowing me to adjust the time fully. Of course, if I don't push it back in accidentally. So there you go. One thing I'll highlight here is, although, parallax and, changes in angle can make it seem otherwise occasionally, this guy has very good alignment with the indices. The second hand hits every damn one of those indices as it's going around the dial here. And that's great. That's one of those subtle things that very often quartz watches don't quite get right, and seeing them having done that here is just absolutely great. So I appreciate that very much. Next thing, the quartz is a beautiful thing. Now look, mechanical purists, again, go suck an egg. I don't care. Mechanicals have a place too. But there are huge benefits here, and especially for somebody who's kind of just not a high horology snob, but just a fan of everyday watches. Here you get a 2 to 4 year power reserve, which is great. You take this off your wrist, oh, pardon me, it'll work fine for a good long time. It's less expensive. In fact, about $1,000 less to get quartz than mechanical on this guy. Oh, that's going to drive some people crazy if I don't change that back. You get incredible accuracy on this guy. This guy has shown to be about 0.1 seconds a day fast. And that's well within the Rolex superlative chronometer spec of +2, -2. I know they're different things, but still, this is more accurate than a Rolex, so remember that. It's more durable, it's more magnetically resistant. Frankly, quartz watches are just a better choice for a big variety of people, and I always have to highlight that there are a lot of people who love mechanicals, and I get it. I do too at some level, but at the same time, the quartz has a lot to bring to the table. Next thing, the price on this guy. So the price, like I said, is about $1,300. Now look, I'm aware that that is not exactly affordable for a lot of people. But the thing is, I think it is a really nice range for a luxury watch. That's a nice price point. The reason I say that is because at that price, you can do everything right. You can nail all the details. You can do fancy finishing tricks that we'll talk about here. You can make it good. You can make a great finishing, great bracelet, great movement, etc. You can make something that is truly a luxury watch in its construction, a watch that you can really be proud to wear, that you can really like a lot. But at the same time, that's not a price point that I think is completely out of range for a lot of people, at least in the States. And, it's not like, oh my God, crazy. It's a reach for a lot of people, but it is within reach. You might be able to save up, but it's not quite like screw you high end in the same sense that, a $6,000 Omega might be. So I like this price point a lot. If you want to have one nice watch, an everyday companion, I think that's workable. It's in that price range for a graduation, retirement gift or something like that for some people. It's a luxury watch, but it is also generally affordable to a lot of people in that true sense of able to be afforded with some substantial work. And so I like this price point a lot because you can get to the point where it's a real luxury watch, but it is also something that you can actually afford without being a Vanderbilt or something like that. No, I'm on the Vanderbilts there. And then finally, on the good side, I like the fact that this is not a watch that has been sort of nerfed or knocked down in some way for having a quartz movement or having a lower price point. And when I say this, I am talking directly at the Swatch Group. These are the folks who own Breguet, Omega, Longines, Rado, Tissot, Certina, Hamilton, etc. This is a huge conglomerate of watch brands, and it is my experience that low prices are sort of done to the watches. If you look at like a Tissot, it's like you can see exactly where they knock down features, where they knock the finishing down to make it not compete with Omega or Longines or something like that. Corners are very consciously and needlessly cut to quote-unquote segment the market. And I find that really, really ugly because everything that Swatch makes on the lower end feels like it's been made to suck a little bit more than it needed to so that Omega can charge more money. I really dislike that a lot. But Tag, on the other end, is owned by LVMH. That's actually the same people who own a bunch of fashion brands like Louis Vuitton, Givenchy, Marc Jacobs, Sephora, Dior, Guerlain. But they've also got like Bulgari, Hublot, and Zenith, high-end watch places. But because they're not like trying to, keep this watch off Omega's back, they're allowing this watch to be quite well done, to be very well finished, while still hitting a pretty reasonable price point. They're not so scared of making value that they refuse to make value. And I appreciate that very, very much. This is a watch that is really, really nice and done very well at a price point that I think is going to be acceptable to a wider range of people. And I don't know that could have been done over at Swatch, which is kind of a shame. But anyways, so that is to me what all is good, is that it's not been, really dressed down for being at a lower price point. The price is in a pretty good range for a lot of people where it's affordable, even if it's not immediately affordable. It's got great benefits of being quartz, a good quartz movement, 200-meter water resist, rotating bezel, solid lumen, a really nice dial. To me, though, what's great about this watch is actually in the details. It's in the finishing. It's in the indices, things like that. So if we take a look at the dial here, what you can see is that every one of those indices is applied. They've actually put it onto the dial rather than it being painted on, like, for instance, on the Breitling Aerospace here. Oh, I should have cleaned this guy off. But anyways, you can see that some of those indices are just painted on, whereas here you've actually got individual things put down onto the dial each time, which looks really nice. And actually, if you look at those individual indices, you can see that each one actually has a very nice polish to it. I mean, it is a very nice polish. If we compare it, for instance, this Seiko over here, this is a Seiko Samurai, you can see that, yeah, they're polished, but it's just that they reflect light. It's not this same kind of black polish, where if it's dark, it's really dark, and if it's light, it's really light. It's just it's a very different sort of polish, and I like that. The case itself is actually well polished. It's a little fingerprinty at the moment, but if I kind of clean that off a little bit, you can see here, this is a very, very nice polish. You can see the phone here that's recording everything, the tripod holding the phone. It's well done. The case back on this guy is pretty good. You can see they've got the nice little Tag Heuer logo in the back here, some checkering, etc. Can't argue with that. The buckle on it, although it's got the blue on there, that's nicely engraved. It's beautifully done, absolutely 100%. You have an actual buttons in the back here rather than just like a springy clasp, which I appreciate. The bracelet itself is actually pretty well done. Honestly, it feels nicer than your average Citizen or Seiko, and I don't mean to down on those brands. I like both of those brands very much, but this is really a step up. This feels to me as something that is a luxury watch. It's finished in the same way that any luxury watch should be, and therefore I think you can count it among those ranks. And so this is a nice watch. It's finished like a nice watch. It's clear that they wanted to do it right, and that they did do it right, and to me, that's what's great here, is that this is a relatively inexpensive watch, at least by luxury standards, but which is really done substantially well, and that's great. On the bad side, there are some missing details here. So, for instance, I would like a slightly better fit down here at the lugs. You can see here that this doesn't exactly match up. There are some gaps here. There's some shaking back and forth. It's not the end of any worlds, but that's something they could definitely improve on a little bit. Similarly, if you look at the bezel here, there is not actually a lume pip on the bezel. What I mean by that is that on most dive watches, you've got a little spot of lume at the top here, which allows you to read the bezel position even late at night. On this guy, there's not that. Not a huge deal, but a deal. The bracelet on this guy is still, unfortunately, a split pin bracelet, meaning that you've got little pins in there that you have to hammer in and out in order to resize it, rather than a bracelet that uses actual screws and allows you to, screw and unscrew the bracelet to get, adjust things. Again, it's a little thing. The logo on the dial here is nice, but it is very much printed on rather than applied. It's got a little bit of texture to it if we kind of take a closer look here. But still, and then the black dial on this guy is very, very flat black. There's not that much good going for it here. I'd like to see maybe a little bit of texture, maybe a little bit of something. I mean, take a look at, for instance, on the Seiko Samurai. They added just a subtle hint of texture, and it really makes the watch a little more compelling than just this flat black dial is. And then I gotta say, the crystal on this guy is just crying out for some kind of an anti-reflective coating. It's not the end of any worlds, but absolutely, this guy shows incredible amounts of reflection. You see in me fighting this for the entire review. I mean, holy crap, does this guy want to reflect reflect everything. And so a little bit of anti-reflective coating here. I'll contrast with the Breitling. This is what the anti-reflective coating buys you. In one of these is readable, one of these is not, even though they're seeing the same light in it. So that's a little detail that would be nice. But all of those things, honestly, are little things. They could be done better, but it's not like a deal breaker that they're not. One thing that does bug me a little bit more is that there is no toolless quick adjust on this guy. Many modern watch bracelets, in fact, most of the good ones, are using now a system where you can, I'm using the Planet Ocean here to demonstrate, but where you can, there's some kind of mechanism or another in there where you can push and extend the bracelet or retract the bracelet, which means if your wrist swells up, because, for instance, you're in Michigan and it's freaking hot, or some other reason, you're able to expand the bracelet and make the watch fit comfortably. The Breitling here has that on the bracelet as well. But this guy, unfortunately, does not. What it does have, which is kind of a step in the right direction, is sort of a diver's extension. They call it a racing suit extension, which, LOL, guys. But it does offer you an additional, how long is that? A fair amount, actually. Hey, that was convenient. It offers you an additional, I don't freaking know. 17 millimeters or so. It's a fair amount, but you know what? It gives you the option to at least keep the watch on the wrist, which is pretty excellent. I appreciate that a lot. And then finally, it occurs to me, I think I was just reading my calipers wrong for the entirety of the freaking measurement section. Well, you can read them correctly, even if I wasn't. I'm going to get a bunch of hateful comments down below about that. But anyways, I really miss the lack of a toolless quick adjust, and it is 2018, guys. This just needs to be there always. And with smaller companies able to do this on a regular basis, it needs to be happening. And Tag has very little excuse for continuing to not have that here. It needs to be a requirement. I know not everyone believes that, but that's just because they haven't had one yet. So, yeah. Then finally, on the bad side, I have to say, this is not a terribly advanced quartz movement. If we hold this guy up next to, say, the Casio Oceanus, this is a really, really nice quartz watch. It's from a company that's, way less, I don't know, Casio's pretty mainstream, but not a luxury company, but you get some really nice things. This is a solar charge on this guy. It has radio control, so it pulls the latest time off the atomic clock every damn night. It has a perpetual calendar on the basis of talking to the atomic clock. It has independent hour hands, so you can adjust the hour without changing the seconds, which is great for time zone differences and things like that. It's not a high accuracy movement. The Swiss are just honestly way behind Japan in terms of quartz movements, and given that this guy is $500 and this guy's $1,300, that's kind of pretty ugly. I'm not a big fan of that, and it's the one thing on this watch that makes this feel like a markedly less value than it could have otherwise had. And so to me, that all of that is the bad, is that the movement isn't terribly advanced. It has no toolless quick adjust, although the little racing extension at least lets you keep it on the wrist. Has some missing details in there, but none of those things are absolutely crucial, just places that Tag could improve in the future there. On the ugly front, unfortunately, there is just one ugly thing about that, and it's common to a lot of watches, but Tag has it worse than many, and that this is very brutal on the secondary market. What I mean by that is that although I couldn't find this exact unit for sale, used on forums and whatnot, a comparable watch was coming in at $800, which originally started at about $15. So, what that means is that if you buy this watch and then you sell this watch, you're probably going to take a bath. Do not buy a Tag unless you plan to keep it for the rest of your damn life or to gift it. You'll want to buy it to wear it and love it to death, or you're going to plan to take a huge bath on it. You can definitely do better if you work with a good AD who will help you out a little bit, but still, that's something you really have to be wary of. Some brands like Rolex and Omega, kind of, sort of, although you take some pretty heavy baths there too, really hold on to value, but Tag is unfortunately not one of them. There were some big, huge gaps, particularly up on the higher end. So that to me is ugly, is that that's kind of a sign that the market thinks that their prices are still fairly high, and there's that big gap on the secondary market. But look, final conclusions, I think that this is objectively a good watch. There is not a whole lot to object to with this guy at all. It is durable, it is accurate, it is well loomed, and frankly, it is just well done. It is a well-made watch with very nice construction, very nice, it's a nice freaking piece. Yeah, it's missing some quartz features that the Japanese do for much, much less money. It's missing a couple of details, and the bracelet could use some updating in the clasps area, although even then it's not as bad as some. But, there is a lot to like here, and I could probably wear this watch and be happy. I mean, to the extent I can be happy with any watch, because I have a sickness here. Do not get into watches, people. But nonetheless, it is a really nice piece. But the real story to me is the price. That's where this guy brings the most. Well, that's what makes it interesting here. That's why I pulled this guy out of the case more than anything else. Because generally, I mean, this is a well-made, Swiss-made watch. Not Swiss-made means all that much, but still, at a price that's going to be doable for a lot of people than your Omegas, a lot more people at least, than your Omegas, your Rolexes, your Longines, etc. This is a reasonably priced watch that's going to work well for a bunch of freaking people. And I kind of like that a lot. I mean, like I said, retail's $1,300, and you should not pay retail, by the way. If your AD wants full bill retail, turn around and find a better AD. Heck, call my guys. DK will help you out at Lewis Jewelers there. But the simple fact is that at full retail, even then, the price is, I think, pretty much okay. Finishing-wise, this is, I think, a little bit above the norm for Swiss watches. If you compare this to like a Tissot, this is absolutely winning by a freaking mile. You can get some other things that are, pushing that, like Monta watches is a micro brand kind of thing, but they're not that far off in price, and the finishing is slightly better. They're also mechanical, so keep that in mind. Citizen Signature line, I think, does about as well on finishing, maybe a little bit less so, but with, much lower price points. But the thing is, most of the stuff in this price range, particularly out of Switzerland, is doing a little bit worse than this for a good bit more money. It doesn't feel nearly as nice. And compared to the Tissots, the Certinas, from Swatch Group, anything they're selling at a lower end takes a crowbar to the kneecaps and finishing. This is just honestly great. Movement-wise, I'll say the value makes it a little bit tougher here. I mean, it would be easier if the Quartz movement was just a little bit more advanced. If they were stealing some tricks from the Japanese, this would be a much easier sell to me. Solar Perpetual, high accuracy, something. And if you compare the movement in this guy to what you could get in a good old-fashioned Citizen, a Casio, or Seiko for like $200 or $300, this does feel behind the times. But the thing is, on the back of the finishing, and the fact that this watch just feels like a luxury watch. It's a silly thing to say at some level, but I think it is also true. This is a watch that I can handle, and I'm like, this is a nice watch, and I've handled a lot of nice watches at this point in time. And it's at this price point where it's a nice area, because it's kind of the trade-off between luxury construction, but you haven't quite yet hit luxury obscene pricing. So ultimately, I think this is actually a pretty good choice for a lot of people. Quartz may not be for everybody. Certainly, I don't need to hear it in the comments, but Tag's designs are also not for everybody. That's honestly the thing that's keeping this guy off my wrist. I'm just not as huge on the design here. But many people would be very happy, of course, staying one step below this, staying in like Citizen, Casio land, whatever. But if you are after something, if you want to take that step up and to get a nice watch, to get a luxury wristwatch, but you don't want to pay something, stupid, crazy, expensive for something well done, well made, well finished, you should do this watch, because I think it's a price that is a reach, but I think it's going to be within reach for a lot of people. And you might consider letting this little guy tag along next time you leave the jewelry store. Huh? Tag along? Tag Heuer? Okay. Anyways, I hope this was interesting, that this review wasn't Heuerable. Okay, that one is really bad. And that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.